You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. We could have put it on his ass. That's what we want to see Congresswoman Val Demings do to Senator Marco Rubio in Florida. Today, she had not officially announced that she is running for the United States Senate. She dropped this video.
People ask me, Val, where do you get your tireless faith that things can always get better? I got it here in Jacksonville, Florida. When you grow up in the South, poor, black, and female, you have to have faith in progress and opportunity. My father was a janitor, and my mother was a maid. She said, Val, never grow tired of doing good. Never tired. Work hard, not just for yourself, but for others. So I went to Orlando to serve as a police officer. Met my husband and #1 partner in crime fighting, Sheriff Jerry Demings. I ended up serving 27 years. I just never got tired of it. Eventually, this working mom worked her way up to chief of police.
Orlando's violent crime this year is down.
Murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, total violent crime, all lower than a year ago.
Under her leadership, there has been the most dramatic decrease in violent crime in the city's history.
They said we never lower crime, but I said never tire. And after all that, I still wasn't tired. So I ran for Congress and got back to work.
Congresswoman Val Demings,
member of the House Homeland Security, Judiciary, and Intelligence Committees.
I've never tired of representing Florida, not for one single moment.
Val Demings is someone who has taken the oath of office not just in Congress, but to protect and serve.
And along the way, we brought law and order to a lawless president. He is an habitual offender committing crimes in progress. Unlike some in Washington, I never tire of standing up for what I believe is right, because no one is above the law. But it turns out there are some in Washington who prefer the same old tired ways of doing business. Too tired to fight the efforts to suppress the people's vote. They fall back to tired talking points and backward solutions.
He knows exactly
there it is,
what
the memorized 25-second speech. That's what Washington, D.C. does.
My mother told me when someone gives you the opportunity to do something big, do not disappoint them. I'm running for the United States Senate because of 2 simple words. Never tire. Over the next few weeks, I hope to share more of my story with more of you. It's a simple question. Can my unlikely story of opportunity expand to more Americans and more Floridians?
Joining us now is the President and CEO of Higher Heights for America, Glynda Carr, and Melanie Campbell, the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. Glad to have both of you. Melanie, folks, look, it's going to be a tough fight. The reality is Senator Marco Rubio, very popular in Florida. That state has gotten redder. Donald Trump won that state in 2020 and 2016. But of course, in the previous election, Andrew Gillum came within 30,000 votes of defeating Ron DeSantis for governor. One of the, when you look at the numbers there, Broward County as well as Miami-Dade County numbers have been awful when it comes to Democratic turnout, especially black turnout. And so what do you think it's going to take for Congresswoman Val Demings to topple Senator Marco Rubio in Florida?
Roland, you're asking me? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. First of all, thanks for the invitation, as always. What it's going to take is going to be turnout, right? Florida is very, that's the state, this is where I grew up. But the diversity of Florida is real. So you have a 13% black voting age population in Florida, but you have a diverse state with many folks from many other parts of the world that are here in Florida. So it is going to be about turnout. And I think that, and this is just my analysis, and I'm not endorsing anybody because I'm a 501c3, so I'll say that up front. But the reality is that I think she has a fighting chance of winning, but it will be truly about turnout. You talked about those numbers, and we're seeing in the 2020, this particular year, turnout being lower in even some of the municipal races. So it's going to be a tough fight, but I think she has a good chance. And you think about the even though we haven't think about what has happened with the Amendment 4, you have a lot more people on the books, maybe not all because of the Republicans pushing back on it, but you do have a lot of room for new voters in the state, as well as and of course I would be remiss in not saying what the role Black women can play in helping her have a fighting chance. But I think she really does. I mean, what I'm hearing, I'm actually in Florida, been in Florida back and forth for the last month or so. So there is a buzz on the ground in the places that I've been in about her candidacy.
Glynda, in that Andrew Gillum race, exit polls showed 18% of Black women voting for DeSantis. Some say that was all tied to the opportunity scholarships there. When we look at that state as well, Democrats have done horrible with Latino turnout. In the last election, the Venezuelan vote, the Cuban vote went strong for Donald Trump. And so it's going to take also putting together a real coalition there of Democrats in Florida. That state has been in disarray, the Democratic Party. And so with Congresswoman Val Demings, not only is she going to have to put together a strong campaign, she really has to lead the effort to repair the party in that state because of the problems that they've had over the past several election cycles.
I agree. But one thing that is in her advantage is her official, as you know, people have, most people think that she had already announced, right? So she is officially announced today. And this is she has a long runway, not the longest runway, to be able to build the momentum in a sustainable campaign. And what that building blocks to a winning campaign starts in Florida. And so she certainly had, we are proud to have endorsed her on day one, Higher Heights, our political action committee, Higher Heights for America political action committee. And so in the state, she will need to get around and build a coalition of voters. And at the base of that coalition are Black women. And so we've seen over the last election cycle that Black women on the ballot, and particularly Black women at federal elections and national elections, will build not only the enthusiasm of Black women to prepare to vote, but to actually build the enthusiasm of Black women to organize their networks to the polls. And then she builds from that building blocks to build a diverse coalition of voters across the state. And then finally, it is also her ability to build the national momentum. We have seen that when you have a candidate that excites America, this is going to be one of the most expensive elections that we will see. We say that every year until we spend more money. And so she's going to need to raise $100 million. And that money, I think, can be excited by donors across this country. But frankly, going back to the work that we do at Higher Heights, is that we want to galvanize Black women to rally around her. And so she has affiliations, using the building blocks and the lessons learned from Kamala Harris. She's a member of a Black sorority, Melanie sorority, Delta Sigma Theta. And is a member of, she's an active member of her church, an active member of a variety of local and national organizations that don't endorse, but these are powerful individual members that they will see themselves in her candidacy and want to support her and volunteer for her and send those $2, $3, $4. And we're, a year out. So when you start talking about sending, grassroots dollars on a monthly basis, it's going to build the excitement and momentum, not only in the state, but also nationally.
Something tells me, Melanie, you and your Deltas, yes, the Deltas cannot as an organization endorse, but individuals can work on campaigns. You said it's going to be ground game, grounding. Look, you can raise all the money you want to, but you got to be able to turn folks out. And so having that long runway Glynda spoke about is going to allow her to build the ground apparatus needed to jack those numbers up. when I looked at the analysis of the Gillum campaign, if you looked at the top 15 voting counties in Florida, it took you till the 11th or 12th one before it was blue. And so you had Republican counties turning out 65 to 75 or percent higher in terms of total turnout. And so she's going to have to cut into that, but also really get those blue counties to jack those numbers up.
Ron, the other thing that people don't know about Florida is it's getting younger. People, you hear Florida is the retirement state. First of all, it's getting too expensive for that to be the case if they don't change things around. But, when you look at the reality, those 18 to 53, young and not so young, they make up the majority of the vote. So that's the other thing about Florida demographics. 30+%, I think it's around 32% are people of color, Black, Latina, and smaller number APIA community, Asia Pacific Islander community. But you're also getting a younger and younger demographic in the state. A lot of people are moving into Florida, and those demographic numbers are changing as well. So, as I stated, and Glynda, good to hear your voice. I can't see you right now, but I hear your voice. But I just happened to wear red today. Just happened to wear red.
Yeah, I'm quite sure. Glynda, when we talk about, again, her candidacy, this is one of those things where on the Democratic side, they probably will say, if you're trying to run against her, we need all y'all to get the hell out of the way so she can focus money and resources on the general election, because Florida also is a weird state in terms of how they have their primaries. Their primaries are like in August, and then you have the general election in November. Andrew Gillum talked about that, where he had spent all of this time, energy, and money to win the nomination, and then turn around, 2.5 months later and run in the general. And so clearing the field is going to be important to allow her to conserve dollars and focus like a laser on Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
Hold on, Melanie. Glynda, then Melanie.
Yeah. And so, Congresswoman Val Demings is a well-known, well-liked congressional member who has made an impact since being elected in 2016. And so on the day that she announced today, you had endorsements announced from Higher Heights for America PAC, from Congressional Black Caucus PAC, Collective PAC. And so you're seeing that she is starting to coalesce national organizations, and certainly I'm sure there will be regional and state and local organizations and influencers that are going to coalesce around her. And the more she coalesces, this is a long runway, Roland, right? For a Black woman. Oftentimes, endorsers jump on a Black woman campaign on the last minute. So the more she can build the momentum, there's an opportunity for her to, like you said, either clear the field or at least lighten the field so that she can really concentrate on the November election. She also has a name, a brand name that continues to be to increase. She was a House impeachment manager. And so some people may have not known who Val Demings was before the first impeachment hearing. They know about Val Demings. She also was on the short list for consideration for a potential vice president running mate for Joe Biden. And so she has not only a national name recognition, but certainly she has a name recognition in the state that puts her ahead of many other candidates. But more importantly, I think, when we get to the general election on one-on-one, she has that name recognition that then she builds that campaign infrastructure and the ability, ground game, to be able to get not only her message out, but her ability to talk to voters, both door to door, phone to phone, text to text, group to group.
Melanie, go ahead.
The only other thing I say is, and there's a governor's race next year, so it's going to be high turnout. And there are also a lot of voting rights challenges in this state as well, with the current governor and legislature trying to do what a lot of other Republicans are doing, and it's just fact, and that is to suppress the Black vote and young people's vote. So there are some headwinds that she'll have to face as well. But also, I think it's going to be a very high turnout election because it's also a governor's race.
All right. Glynda Carr, Melanie Campbell, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Roland.
All right, let's go back to our panel. Scott Bolden, Monique Presley, and Robert Patillo. I'll start with you. Monique. This is going to be, again, a very, very tough race. Senator Marco Rubio is extremely popular in the state of Florida, and, of course, already raising money. It's going to be a ton of money raised, I dare say. I wouldn't be shocked to see Congresswoman Demings rake in the kind of money that went towards Beto O'Rourke or even Jamie Harrison in his race. But it's going to be, as Melanie pointed, it's going to be turnout, and this is where, look, you can raise all the money you want to, all the endorsements, but you don't win unless you have more votes than the other person, which means how do you get in those blue counties a turnout going from 57 and 59 to 68 to 72 to 75 or even 80? What is she going to have to say to black voters in Florida, to black men in particular, to say in those Haitian voters in Florida as well? I mean, you know, in order for her to win, she's got to have a massive black turnout and also being able to reach other groups.
Yes, and I want to be very, very concise because I believe, obviously, that she is a qualified candidate. I am thrilled, Win with Black Women, that she is running. We've watched the trajectory of her career. We've watched her take on each and every challenge and just crush it. And I agree with what Glynda and Melanie said about her profile, not just local or state, but nationally. But when it comes to what she's going to say, I know she's going to say the right things because she's done the right things. She stands for the right things and she's doing the right things. What I need to happen is for folks in our position nationally to not make her work harder. Okay, so all that Kamala the cop stuff that we had to deal with, that smeared a presidential candidate and then made it hard for a vice presidential candidate, but she overcome it. We shouldn't see any of that here from the Black folks talking heads who say that they are for progress and want for legislation to get passed and want for us to have a continued majority control in the Senate. Watch your mouths. Don't make it harder for Val Demings to talk to her own Floridians, whether they're Haitian, whether they're Black men, or whether they're women, whether they're whomever. Don't make that job harder. She's not running from the fact that she was a top cop. So you can't use it to smear her. If you have issues with her record and you don't live in Florida, I mean, shut up. For real.
You also have this, Robert.
Sit it out.
You also have this, Robert. Republicans have been, of course, they spent $100 million in the last campaign, 2020, focused on defund the police. They probably, if they try that with her, don't be surprised if you see this.
I want to make it quite clear that this amendment is completely irrelevant. I served as a law enforcement officer for 27 years. It is a tough job, and good police officers deserve your support. You know, it's interesting to see my colleagues on the other side of the aisle support the police when it is politically convenient to do so. Law enforcement officers risk their lives every day. They deserve better, and the American people deserve. I have the floor, Mr. Jordan.
Lady has,
what?
Look,
did I strike a nerve? Law enforcement officers deserve better than to be utilized as pawns. And you and your colleagues are ashamed of yourself.
The gentlelady will suspend and the clock will be stopped. I want to admonish members. They must not interrupt someone who has the time.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a
simply
question?
Can't shout out. If you think that someone is saying
I agree.
Mr. Jordan, you don't know what in the heck you're talking about. You know nothing about what law enforcement officers
I know about my motive.
And you're using them as pawns because it serves ridiculous political purposes.
Val, everyone must suspend. I am making the point. No one may shout out when someone else has the time. Not Mr. Gomert.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Not Mr. Jordan. Nobody.
Not Mr. Cicilline.
Not Miss
Demings.
He didn't do that. But nobody did.
Not Mr. Jordan.
Not Miss
nobody.
Cicilline. Okay, no, but I agree with that. But
then how do we?
Everybody.
I have a question.
I will simply. There is no question. Nobody may shout out.
When you give a speech, Mr. Chairman, about motives and questioning motives, and then our motives are questioned, how do we address that?
The rules allow a request words.
I have watched them live and die, and you know nothing about that. And to utilize them as political
Mr. Chairman,
funds.
I have a point of.
Robert, they ain't gonna try that soft on law enforcement crap with her.
Well, a couple of things. One, I think Jim Jordan needs to be worried about what those wrestlers in Ohio are doing and what they're doing with law enforcement there, while he's been running for that for years. Secondarily, even with that, let's remember, in Georgia, where I'm at, they ran against Raphael Warnock, a Baptist minister, as not being Christian enough. So Republicans have no gall. They don't have any, there's no off switch for them. They have their talking points and they have nothing else. They don't care what the objective facts or reality are on the ground. But I do think for Congresswoman Demings, the political fate is going to be inexorably tied to the progress that the Biden administration is going to do. This is why it's so important for Democrats to govern with gumption. You got to put points on the board. You can't run against the boogeyman Trump anymore. You're going to have a legislative agenda that you have passed and that you've gotten done, whether it's through executive action, whether it's through reconciliation, however it needs to get done. Because if you're able to do that, that's how you get those Duval bangers out in Jacksonville to turn out. That's how you get those folks down in Little Haiti to turn out. But when you can show them tangibles that you've done, right? And then I will call him Little Marco, Little Rubio, just like Trump did, to make fun of him.
Scott.
You know, I think you're right. It's going to be a tough race. They may or may not hang the whole police thing. We can't really control that. We can control our mouths, but we can't control what black men and women say in Florida. I got to tell you, you say it's tough. I just don't think Florida's winnable. And see, Mark Rubio's base of support is in Miami-Dade County. That's a big Democratic stronghold, but he pulls from that. And so you need those votes in Miami-Dade, as you know, to offset the lack of voter turnout in those other 10 to 15 counties so that you have a running lead when you go to those outlying counties, the 11 or 12 talked about. They wouldn't turn out for Andrew Gillum. I don't know what the Democrats are going to do to get them to turn out this time, but I will tell you this. You got to worry about being able to raise money because I got to tell you, with Wisconsin, North Carolina, Pennsylvania in play, the Democrats have a better chance of winning in those other jurisdictions, in open Senate seats, than they do in Florida.
I can tell you, Scott,
the DNC and the DNC donors that it's worth that fight. And that's going to be a challenge.
And here's the deal. She's going to raise more money from small donors than big donors, and that's going to be the key there.
Folks, back to our road mark unfiltered video in just one moment.
Racial injustice is a scourge on this nation, and the black community has felt it for generations. We have an obligation to do something about it. Whether it's canceling student debt, increasing the minimum wage, or investing in black-owned businesses, the black community deserves so much better. I'm Nina Turner, and I'm running for Congress to do something about it.